Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to our Lord's Day Holy Reading. We're having some internet troubles. I don't know how this is going to work out. We tried to delay 5 minutes so hopefully let the internet come back a little bit, but hopefully you'll catch most of it. And we'll continue on with Thomas Manton and the Lord's Prayer. And here's Mr. Beck.
All right, welcome. We're still in and lead us not into temptation, Doctrine 1, and the use. We started, and that is, if temptations be a usual evil wherewith we encounter in the present world, then first we should not be dismayed at them. And we reached point 4 of that. We'll try to, Lord willing, reach the second doctrine today. So, point 4. Consider the comforts of the tempted, abundantly God provided for his servants. Subpoint 1, Jesus Christ, our general, the captain of our salvation, in whose quarrel we are engaged, hath overcome all our enemies. We are interested in his victory. John 16:33, in the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, world. We may have many pressing and searching troubles, but the sting of them is gone. Non pugna sublata est sed. Christ hath not taken away the combat, we must fight. But the victory is sure, he hath overcome the world. This is our comfort when we are full of faintings and fears, that all things are vanquished and overcome by Christ. That though they terrify us, yet they shall not hurt us. Though Christ will not exempt us from battle, yet we have to do with the devil, the world, and death, which are all vanquished enemies. Subpoint. He hath a tender sense and knowledge of our estate. Christ saith to Peter, Satan hath a desire to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. Luke 22:32. Christ's love and mercy is never more at work for his people than when they are most assaulted by Satan. Then is he interceding for them. John 13:1, Jesus, having loved his own, which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. When Christ was about to go to heaven, mine own are to be left in the world. They are exposed to great temptation. And that set his heart a work, as if he had said, Poor creatures, they are undone if I help them not. 1 and 2, and he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem, rebuke thee. Is not this fire? Our whole case and danger, it is clearly known to Christ. He knows how Satan molests and troubles you in your approaches to God, how he seeks to divert your, weaken your confidence. We have a friend and advocate that puts forth the strength of his and intercession and is zealous and affectionate for the welfare of his people. The Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem, rebuke thee. Subpoint 3, he is engaged in the battle and fights with us by renewing the strength of his own grace. Philippians 4:13, I can do all strengtheneth me. He gives relief and help according to the nature of the conflict. If there be duty to be done, burden to be borne, or battle to be fought, Christ is giving in supply. As the olive trees, Zechariah 4:11 and 12, were always dropping into the lamps, so is he dropping in strength and grace into the heart. Psalm 16:8, I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. When a man hath an able second, he doth with the more courage go to the conflict. God is on our right hand, he is our second. His grace comes into the combat, and then the field cannot be lost. If we might be the more confident. Subpoint 4, he will reward us when we have done. Hold fast to the end, and I will give thee a crown of life, a garland of immortality that shall never wither. If you will but hold out, continue to fight the good fight of faith, there will a time of triumph come. He that is now a soldier shall be a conqueror when the crown of righteousness shall be put upon his head. 2 Timothy 4:8. And mark that, Roman temptations in general, and second, what to do in an hour of temptation which comes upon the world. When there are dangers without, and we know not what evil may be a coming, and our hearts are full of doubt how we may support and bear up ourselves. First, to direct you as to temptation in general. 1. You must be completely armed. Ephesians 6:11, put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Not a piece only, but the whole armor of God. Otherwise you will never come off with honor and safety from the spiritual conflict. The poets feign of their Achilles that he was vulnerable only in the heel, and there he got his death wound. A Christian, though he be never so well furnished in other parts, yet if any part be left naked, you are in danger. Our first parents were wounded in their heel. Who would have thought that they which had such vast knowledge of God and his creatures, that they should be enticed by appetite? And Solomon, who had the upper part of his soul so well guarded, that he should be enticed by women. To see men of great knowledge to be unmortified and miscarry by their sensual appetite is sad. A Christian must have saving grace wanting. 2 Peter 1:5, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, etc. There is all the graces, and they must come out in their turn. We need faith and virtue, zeal and holiness, and knowledge to guide it, and patience to arm it against the troubles of the present life. And we need temperance to moderate our affections to our worldly enjoyments, and godliness that we may be frequent in communion with God, peace among our brethren, and may not make fractions in the church. And we need charity that we may be to all that are about us. There is use and work for all graces, one time or other. Sometimes we shall be tempted to a neglect of God. At other times we shall be tempted to make a breach upon brotherly kindness. At other times there will be a breach of charity. Sometimes the devil seeks to tempt us to fleshly wickedness. Therefore we need temperance. Sometimes to spiritual wickedness, to error. Therefore we need knowledge. Sometimes to raging with despair. Then we need faith. We need the whole armor of God, for Satan hath his various ways of battery and assault. Sometimes through ignorance we miscarry and run into error. Sometimes for want of faith we run into despair and discomfort. Sometimes for want of temperance, violent, corrupt lusts overset the soul. Subpoint 2, we must often pray to God for renewed influences. We must not only get habits of grace, but pray for a renewed influence. It is notable, next to the spiritual armor, the apostle mentioneth prayer. Ephesians 6:18, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance. We never receive so much from God upon earth as to stand in need of no more. And therefore, though you put on the whole armor of God, yet praying always with all supplication in the Spirit. Why? Because without the Lord's special assistance, whereby he actuates those graces, we can never defend ourselves nor offend the adversaries or do anything to purpose in the spiritual life. Strength of grace inherent will not bear us out against new assaults. Habitual grace, it needs actual influence. Partly that these graces may be applied and excited to work. Philippians 2:13, he giveth to will and to do. God giveth to do. That is, excites that strength you have and carrieth it out to work, and then that it may be directed in work. 2 Thessalonians 3:5, and the Lord direct your hearts into the love of God and into the patient waiting for Christ. Every time we would make use of the helmet of salvation, when we would lift up the head and wait for the mercy of God. The Lord direct you. We must be directed, and not only so, but that it may be supplied with new strength. For it is said, Isaiah 40:29, he giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no power he increaseth strength. And he doth continue it. Luke 22:32, I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. Thus will God keep us in dependence for those liberal aids and constant supplies of his grace, without which we cannot use the grace that we have. Subpoint 3, You must resist. 1 Peter 5:9, whom resist, steadfast in the faith. James 4:7, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Stand your ground, and then Satan falls. In all those assaults, Satan hath only weapons offensive, as fiery darts, none defensive. We have not only the sword of the Spirit, which is an offensive weapon, but the shield of faith, that is a defensive piece of armor. Therefore your safety lieth in resisting. Now this resistance must be 1, not faint and cold, but strong and vehement. 2, thorough and total. 3, constant and perpetual. Point 1, not faint and cold. Some kind of resistance may be made by general and common grace. The light of nature will rise up in defiance of many sins, especially at first. But this must be earnest and vehement. It is against the enemies of your soul. Paul's resistance was with serious dislikes and deep groans. Romans 7:15 and 24, the evil that I hate, and O wretched man, how shall I be delivered? In most cases, a detestation or peremptory denial is enough. When the devil tempts Christ to worship him, Matthew 4:10, get thee behind me, Satan. In other cases, there must be serious disputes and repulses. When Eve speaks faintly and coldly, the devil renews his assaults with more violence. Genesis 3:1-3, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. She speaks there warmly and with too impatient a resentment of the restraint, and too cold in the commination and threatening. Therefore the devil works upon her when he saw she amplifieth the restraint, for she saith more indeed, we must neither eat nor touch it. A faint denial is a kind of grant, and therefore your repulse to Satan must be vehement and strong. In many cases, slight Satan. Answer with indignation, as though a dog barks, yet the traveler goes by. Satan cannot endure contempt. At other times, argue for God strongly. Now, the great argument that quickens you to this lively and vehement resistance is to consider thy soul is in danger, and all thy eternal concernments. So some expound that Ephesians 6:12, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. In heavenly places, quote, it is in the original. No worldly concernments must go so near as that which concerns the eternal good and salvation of your souls. What would the devil have from thee but thy soul and thy precious enjoyments, thy peace of conscience, communion with God, thy hopes of eternal life? And when Satan comes and bids nothing but worldly vanities, we should repel them with indignation. A merchant that hath a precious commodity, and a chapman bids him a base price, he puts up his wares with indignation, and will not so much as regard him or hear him. So when the devil comes and would cheat you of your precious enjoyments, you should repel him with indignation when there is such base and unworthy trifles to come in competition with your great hopes. As Christ, Matthew 16:26, what is a man profited in the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? What? Shall I lose my soul, my hopes and happiness, and all for such paltry things, for a little temporal advantage? 2, subpoint 2, it must be a thorough and total resistance. When you yield, the devil encroacheth upon you. We are bid in the Canticles to take, quote, take the little foxes, to dash Babylon's brats in pieces. We should not yield to Satan a little. The devil at first cannot hope to prevail for greater things, therefore he seems more modest in his temptations. But lesser sticks set the greater on fire. When ye entertain lesser temptations, this kindles in your souls, and it is easily blown up into a great flame in your conscience. At first, when the devil came to our first parents, hath God said? And then, you shall not surely die. Hath God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the garden? The first temptation was more modest. The approaches of Satan to the soul are gradual. He asks but a little. But it is a great matter if we grant it. Consider the evil of temptation is better kept out than got out. The stone on the top of the hill, when it begins to roll downward, it is a hard thing to stay it. We cannot say how far it will go. Saith the deceived heart, I will yield but a little, and never yield again. The devil will carry thee further and further until he hath left no tenderness in thy conscience. As many that thought to venture but a shilling or two, yet by the secret witchery of gaming, they play away their estate, clothes, and all. So many that think they will sin but little at first, at last sin away all principles of conscience and profession of godliness. Subpoint 3, it must not be temporary for a while, but perpetual. It concerns us not only to stand out against the first assault of Satan, but a long siege. Satan, what he cannot gain by argument, seeks to procure by importunity. But resist him, saith the apostle, steadfastly in the faith, 1 Peter 5:9. As his instrument spake to Joseph, from day to day, quote, she ceased not, Genesis 39:10. Deformed objects, when accustomed to them, seem not so odious. So the devil hopes to prevail at last. At least temptation will not seem so odious. But you must keep your zeal as we rate away an importunate beggar that will not be answered. To yield at last is to lose the glory of the conflict. Grace must not only have its work, but its perfect work. James 1:4. So let all our graces, temperance, godliness, and brotherly kindness have their perfect work. And point 4, the last section today. There is required watchfulness. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant. You that are not ignorant of Satan's devices should watch that you give not him an advantage. 2 Corinthians 2:11, nor an occasion. 2 Corinthians 11:12, lest Satan tempt you, nor a pretense. Galatians 5:13, to the flesh. Certainly, he that would not be foiled needs a great and constant jealousy over his heart. He had need to guard his senses. Psalm 119:37, turn away mine eyes from beholding vanity, and to look to his company. Psalm 119:115, depart from me, ye evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my God. And to avoid all occasions of sin, not rush into them, but keep out of the way. Proverbs 4:14, enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. For this is to ride into the devil's quarters, to run into the mouth of danger. Heretofore, these were wholesome instructions, and why should they not be so now? The devil is not less subtle, or sin less odious and dangerous. Only we are more foolhardy. Therefore, stand not at such a distance as we should from occasions. It is easier to avoid the occasion than the sin when occasion is offered. As it is easier for a bird to fly from the snare than when entangled to avoid the danger. Therefore, when you run into harm's way, you tempt Satan to tempt. And when you look not to yourselves, it is just with God to let you fall into the snare. Okay, I'm sorry. That wasn't it. Secondly, there's another page. There are special times of temptation when Christians should look to themselves. There is an evil day, Ephesians 6:13, that ye may be able to stand in the evil day. And there is an hour of temptation upon the world, Revelations 3:10. I will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world. There are certain times when God is proving what men will do, and when the devil is likely to make a great advantage of our discontents and afflictions. When things fall cross to our desires, and we know not what evil waits us. How should we do to behave ourselves? 1. Be not overconfident or overdifident, not overconfident in running beyond the bounds of our calling to cast ourselves into dangers and hazards of temptation, nor overdifident by base flying from or giving way when God calls for valiant resistance. Both ways the devil likely to assault us, either by making us foolhardy, So Satan seeks to drive us beyond the bounds of our calling, to put us out of our place that we may be a prey to him. As men use to trouble the water that they may rouse the fish and draw them into the snare and drive them out of places of safety where they rest, so the devil seeks to put us out of our safety. Peter would needs come to Christ. Matthew 14:8, Lord, be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And we see he sinks before he could accomplish his purpose. So when we are overconfident and run out of our calling upon hazards, then we are ever and anon ready to sink. But we should not turn back when God calls us to a valiant resistance. Should such a man as I flee? Nehemiah 6:11. Observe Peter's dastardliness when he ventures without a call into the priest's hall. A question of the damsels overturns him. He that was so cowardly when he was out of his way, look upon his boldness when he was in his work. Acts 4:7 unto verse 13. When they saw the boldness of Peter and John, they marveled. John was the disciple of love, and Peter was the fearful disciple. Yet how full of boldness, courage, and zeal they were called and singled out to give proof of the reality of God's grace. And therefore we should never be over forward nor over backward, but own God in his truth when we are in our calling. Let not Satan bring you out of your place to cast yourselves as a prey to him. Subpoint 2 on the secondly, in an hour of temptation, we should be more solicitous about duties than events, and about sins than dangers. As to events, God is concerned as well as you, and he will order them for his own glory. It should be your great care that you may be kept blameless to his heavenly kingdom. 2 Timothy 4:17 and 18. The Lord that hath delivered me out of the mouth of the lion shall deliver me from every evil work, and will preserve me unto his heavenly kingdom. However God deal with you as to events, and whatever dangers attend you, this should be your care mainly, that you may not sin, but be kept blameless. David often begged direction that he might be guided in his trouble, and not falter and do anything unseemly. Subpoint 3, be more jealous of a Satan's wiles than of his open assaults. Natural courage and the bravery of a common and ordinary resolution, together with deep engagement of credit and interest, may do much to make us stand out against assaults, against open force and violence of evil men. But there needs a great deal of judgment to stand out against the wiles and crafts of the devil. Flesh and blood will not so easily bear us out against the secret ensnarings of the heart. The young prophet doth thunder out his message against the king, 1 Kings 13:3, yet was enticed by the wiles of the old prophet. So we may stand out against an open assault and apparent violence, but take heed of the secret wiles of Satan. Subpoint 4, the wiles of Satan are to enforce and draw us into those corruptions which are incident to the season. Here is the great point of spiritual wisdom, to be seasoned in our mortification and to withstand the spiritual evil that is apt to grow upon us in the time of our fears. Psalm 56:3, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Then our great business is to cherish our dependence upon God, to prevent distrust and unbelieving thoughts of God's providence. As, on the other side, in a time when we are likely to be corrupted with ease and prosperity, then our business is to watch against security and deadness of heart, which is apt to grow upon us. As Nazianzen said, when things go prosperous with me, I read the lamentations of Jeremiah. I remember the mournful passages which befall the people of God, and that is my cure. So to prevent despondency in a time of fears, to encourage our souls to dependence. Now when our wills are crossed, dangers attend us on every side, and we know not how far evil will break out to the overturning of all? What are the sins incident to such a time of trouble? And how do the wiles of Satan come upon us? 1. Impatience. Genesis 30, verse 1. When the will of Rachel was crossed, she said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. When we impatiently fret against the Lord. Psalm 37:1. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity. Subpoint 2. Murmuring and repining against the Lord. That is another snare. Jonah 4:9. I do well to be angry, even unto death, when he was crossed. Discontent at God's providence gratifieth Satan exceedingly, when we will justify ourselves and think it a kind of zeal to be angry and pet against providence. Subpoint 3. A spirit of revenge against instruments, when we do not sweetly calm the heart with the remembrance of God's hand. 2 Samuel 16:9. Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over thee and take off his head. Thus, when wicked men disturb order, the heart is apt to rise in revenge. Therefore, we are to calm our hearts. Subpoint 4. There is fainting in duty. When we begin to give our over prayer and are discouraged and are loth to wrestle with God in an ordinance. Hebrews 12:12. Lift up the hands which hang down and the feeble knees. When a man's hands begin to wax feeble and he is discouraged in the ways of the Lord. My foot hath well nigh slipped, saith David. Psalm 73:2. Subpoint 5. There is closing with sinful means and running to them for an escape, as Saul when he was crossed. 1 Samuel 28:7. Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. When we go to carnal shifts and unearthly means, these are very natural to us. Subpoint 6. Despair and distrustful thoughts of God, though we have had much experience of his goodness. David, 1 Samuel 27:1. I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul, after all his experience. And subpoint 7, the last one of the day. Questioning our interest in God by reason of crosses or the doubtful posture of our affairs. Judges 6:13. If the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? These are the wiles of Satan. Ride out the storm upon gospel encouragements. This will bear us up. It is but a moment to eternity. It is but a light affliction, and will work for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. 2 Corinthians 4:17. We've come to Doctrine 2, and we'll proceed with that, Lord willing, next time. So thank you, and go in God's grace, truth, and mercies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peck.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Peck. Thank the Lord. And nice again to have you online. Sorry about the trouble at the beginning there. It's sort of how it is with the internet here, but thankfully it fixed up. So anyway, Lord willing, we will talk to you again another time.